Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. This is Boris Tizenghausen with you. Today is August 12th. There are a lot of interesting news stories. Trump revealed what he plans to do with Putin in Alaska and even suggested a possible exchange of territories. Why is the US president repeating Putin's talking points about the war? And in Alaska, they're preparing a very unpleasant surprise for Putin. We'll also talk about how Russian state propaganda started discussing a new special military operation against Azerbaijan and about the strikes on Russia's unique factories that happened last night. And about how Kadyrov's son danced with a golden pistol at the Philharmonic. There will be a lot of interesting news about this and more. So, if this is your first time on this channel, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Let's get into it. Trump made a series of statements about negotiations with Putin and the war in Ukraine. He said that the meeting with Putin in Alaska would likely be more of a preliminary one. He said he would ask Putin to end the war. At the same time, he added that he expects something constructive to come out of this meeting. Russia has occupied some important territories, and we will try to get some of those territories back, said Donald Trump. Now, it's important to understand that when Trump says important territories, he means territories that are important in his view. That is, most likely, these are territories that are significant in terms of mineral extraction. This includes part of the Zaporizhzhia region, including Melitopol, Enerhodar, and the northern part of Priazovia. That is, there are deposits of titanium ore, zirconium, and vanadium there, which are used in rocket engineering and nuclear energy. And the Melitopol lithium deposit is actually one of the largest in Europe. So the US has a potential interest there. I think for Trump, it's not about these territories being important for Ukraine, but rather about his own interests. Right now, the US is simply competing with China for sources of titanium and zirconium. That's why these materials are critical for the defense industry. And China is actively buying them up. And control over the lithium deposit would give the US real leverage against China, which currently dominates lithium supplies. Also, I think it would be interesting to take control of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. There were discussions about this, I think you remember. And the next meeting will already be between Zelensky and Putin. Oh, and Trump said that it will either be two separate meetings, Trump-Putin and Trump-Zelensky, or all three together. And there were some very important statements made there. Yesterday he said a lot, and frankly some of it was very strange. We'll get to that in a moment. I can get along with Zelensky, but I don't agree with what he did. I really don't agree. This is a war that shouldn't have happened. Zelensky got approval to start the war and kill everyone indiscriminately. But he needs approval for a land swap. There will be some kind of land exchange, said Donald Trump. Well, of course, I remember perfectly well how Ukraine was conducting exercises on its own territory and then how it moved into the Kursk and Belgorod regions. Columns of tanks just advanced toward Moscow. But honestly, sometimes I'm just amazed at the persistence with which people try to whitewash Putin in this case. I understand what's behind this. Before negotiations, it's common to make a few complimentary statements. Maybe flatter the Kremlin's alpha pensioner a little. But you can't juggle and distort facts when it comes to a subject like war. Above all, it's disrespectful to those who are defending Ukraine, their own country, from the occupiers to those who died defending their homeland. And in general, it's a devaluation of the Ukrainian people's heroism. We didn't start this war. We would have lived peacefully and happily if that empty-eyed moth hadn't dragged its biotrash onto our land. And believe me, the US is definitely not in a position right now to bend to Russia. This is pure kowtowing to Putin. In his statement, "We didn't start the war, we're ending it," that's just a repetition of Putin's narrative. By the way, if Ukraine started the war, then why is Trump planning to impose sanctions on Russia? Good question, right? Besides, Trump corrected his slip of the tongue when he said we're flying to Russia, to Alaska. Everyone was like, what? What is even going on here? Well, it was just a slip of the tongue. It happens. I wouldn't nitpick about it, but a lot of people wrote that it was a Freudian slip and so on. Trump wrote, called the question, "Can Ukraine defeat Russia?" a stupid one? Now take a look at this. He said the following: Russia is a warring country, and that's exactly what they do. They fight a lot of wars. They defeated Hitler and Napoleon. Is Medinsky by any chance preparing Trump on historical matters over there? So maybe someone should remind him about the great victories of the eternally warring Soviet Union, and then Russia, how the Soviet Union got beaten by little but proud Finland in the Winter War, how the Soviet Union got beaten in Afghanistan, and how Russia itself couldn't defeat Chechnya the first time. It took time, it took betrayal, deception, and so on. And now Russia is getting beaten in Ukraine, having already lost over 1 million of its own soldiers here. By the way, regarding their claim that they defeated Hitler, Trump says they defeated Hitler. This is already devaluing the contribution of the Allies, including the United States. It's amazing. Why devalue your own country's contribution just to showcase some imaginary greatness of Russia, when you can clearly see that Putin has to be rescued? Well, this is simply a masterpiece. Trump has already said before that if the Russians hadn't gotten bogged down, they would have taken Kiev. But here, he outdid himself. This is probably, in quotes, some kind of diamond in Trump's speech. The Russians would have been in Kiev in 4 hours if they had taken the highway. But the Russian general decided to go through the farmland. In my opinion, one of the most memorable scenes of this war, especially in its first months, was the destruction of the Russian convoy on the Zhytomyr highway. That was when the whole world saw how the Russians, who were pushing forward along the highway, there was so much equipment that they were moving in 2 columns, were simply crushed by the armed forces. And I remember very well those first months when you would drive along the Zhytomyr highway. There were, of course, craters, but closer to Kyiv here, there was a huge amount of burned out Russian equipment standing right on the road and on the roadside. And there were even pockets where, I don't know, maybe a dozen of them were clustered together. Many people took photos and posed for pictures with all of it. So I remember this very well. And so, as not to be unfounded, I'll show you a video now of how the Russians are driving through the swamps, according to Donald Trump's version. This is Kyiv region, the Kyiv-Chernihiv highway, the first days of the full-scale invasion. Take a look.
Nitra, this is Udar. I'm listening to you. Udar, this is Nitra. The 6th Regiment is almost lost. What? I can't report on the 6th Regiment yet. I'm still gathering information. There are a lot of losses. We were waiting for the head of the column. They fell into an ambush. The regiment commander was killed. I'm still figuring out the rest. Once you figure it out and gather everyone, report to me. Do you copy? They were firing from there with artillery, tanks, and from a drone. If I understood correctly, Bayraktars were flying.
Listen, we live in the internet age. Anyone can watch those videos of how the full-scale invasion began. So why this, nonsense about swamps, farmland, vegetable gardens, and so on? All right, fine. Let's do it this way. If one general decided to go through gardens and vegetable plots, then why didn't another general take the highway? And why didn't they reach Kyiv in 4 hours? I mean, there were plenty of days, even months to spare. Or did the entire Russian army just get stuck in a vegetable garden? Actually, there is an explanation for this. What Trump is doing, I understand, it's cynical, of course. It's not pretty. It's actually immoral. But there is an explanation for this. He wants to show that Putin and his army, well, it's a very strong army, but they just got a little unlucky. Otherwise, of course, they would have captured Kiev a long time ago. By the way, this coincides with the Russian narrative that Putin is sparing us. That's why he's not capturing us. So, basically, before Alaska, Trump does the following. Yes, of course you would have captured it. You're strong. You're just, well, super powerful. Even despite the fact that you walk around in 5-centimeter heels, you're very powerful. You're a powerful old man, like in the famous story, and you would have conquered everyone. Everyone. So, well, that's why. Go ahead and sign it. You're super powerful. Go on, sign it. So, but of course, the motives are different. Russians, they really believe that Putin pities us and would have already taken over all of Ukraine long ago. And, well, for Trump, basically, words mean nothing. The main thing for him is to achieve his goal. I don't know if that's good. For example, if there were such a manager on the team, absolutely unscrupulous but always achieved his goals, I think he would be valued. And he achieves his goals. But when it comes to determination, Trump has it. He can give the order to eliminate General Soleimani. He can. He can give the order to start bombing Iran. He can. He can try to impose sanctions against the whole world. He can. The thing is, Trump has no principles, but he has an enormous amount of determination and a desire to achieve his goals. And with European leaders, it's the opposite. They have principles, but they lack determination. Unfortunately. That's how we live. Because really, if we had the necessary number of missiles, the Russians would have been at the negotiating table long ago. By the way, Trump also said that he isn't confident about the results. Quote, "I think my meeting with Putin will be good, but maybe it will be bad." Yeah, well, it's a trial meeting. The main thing is that it doesn't end like this. They go behind closed doors and have a little chat. By the way, do you remember Helsinki when Trump rushed off for some reason to meet with Putin? They did something behind closed doors. And afterwards, no one understood what actually happened there. So that this meeting doesn't end like this. Putin and Trump come out looking satisfied. Putin will say, we're ready for an air ceasefire. And if Zelensky is there, which by all accounts he will be, they'll both just look at him. And I have a feeling that's exactly how it will end. And in response, Ukraine will say, no, not an air ceasefire, but a complete cessation of hostilities. And then Putin will say, see, they don't even want to take a small step. Here I am, graciously offering an air ceasefire. And why does he need to beg for an air ceasefire? We'll talk about that a bit later as well. Well, the US, of course, by the way, promised to consult with European countries, and this consultation will take place tomorrow at 16:00 Kiev time, with Vice President Vance attending. And from Europe, there will be Merkel, Macron, Starmer, and the prime ministers of Italy, Poland, and Finland. That's quite a serious team. They will discuss further options for putting pressure on Russia, as well as preparations for possible peace talks. In other words, Trump is doing everything possible to keep Europe out of this conflict, out of the configuration for discussing and making decisions, but it's not working out that way. Meanwhile, friends, let me remind you that our soldiers are making incredible efforts to hold back all the evil that has come to our land, fighting for every piece of our Ukrainian soil. That's why I'm asking you. Right now, we have an important fundraiser for FPV drones with fiber optics for the 101st Brigade. They are stationed in Chasiv Yar. Yes, right on the front lines. And FPV drones with fiber optics are exactly what will help them drive out all those Russians hiding in every nook and cranny. Well, drive out? More like leave them there for good. That's why this fundraiser is so important. And the Russians already claimed a week ago that they had taken Chasiv Yar. But as you can see, there is no confirmation whatsoever, partly because the 101st Brigade is heroically holding the defense there. Let's help our soldiers. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video and also in the comments. We don't have much left to go. Let's do it. We can do this together with you. I always thank you immensely, both from myself and on behalf of our soldiers. If you're not watching on my channel, sometimes that happens, here is a QR code which you can use to go directly to the fundraiser. There you'll find Monobank, Private and PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. Thank you so much. By the way, friends, I want to pass on huge thanks from the crew of unmanned systems of the 252nd Battalion, for whom we recently completed a fundraiser for the Magura and various things needed for it. Everything has already been delivered to its destination, and our soldiers send you their deepest gratitude. Here are some photos from them. I spoke with the commander. They're as happy as can be. They say, once again, you came to our rescue, so you guys are awesome. So friends, Greta Thunberg has resurfaced and announced a second attempt to sail to Gaza. The Swedish eco-activist claims that this time we'll make it. That is, we're setting off from Spain, and there will be dozens of boats. Well, last time they sailed on a single boat, and Israel rather ingloriously sent them back. Greta, you're an eco-activist after all. Well, I mean, why don't you sail into the Black Sea? Did you forget that you're an eco-activist? I have some important information for you, Greta. You could sail into the Black Sea, where Putin sank 2 tankers full of fuel oil, polluting absolutely everything there: birds, mammals, dolphins, fish. Basically, he's just destroying the entire area. That's where you should go first, at the very least. Or you could also sail around the Danish Straits, where dozens of very, very old tankers from the Russian Federation's Shadow Fleet are transporting millions of tons of oil and petroleum products. If something happens to just one of them, even Greta Thunberg's native Sweden would be affected. So that's if Greta is actually interested, of course. And so that Greta can understand me, we've recently launched an English language channel, Friends. I'll leave a link to it in the description of this video after the payment details. so you can share the videos and the channel link with your English-speaking friends. We'll be spreading Ukraine's perspective and the voices of Ukrainians to the widest possible, and most importantly, targeted audience. And please don't ever forget to subscribe to this very important channel, because why? Because a calm and thorough analysis possesses a truly interesting and remarkable quality. It makes genuinely good people feel significantly calmer, and conversely, it sets the backsides of bad people completely on fire. You can regularly see in the comments here Putin fans saying, "Shut up!" That's how the demons come out of them. Shut up, Four Eyes! Putin will defeat everyone and cut off and cluck, cluck, cluck. That's how it is. It's all there. So, Russian state propaganda has started threatening Azerbaijan with a new special military operation. In other words, they're raising the stakes without any hesitation. And what really infuriated them is that Baku might lift the moratorium on supplying weapons to Ukraine. Well, let me remind you how it all started. That is the shooting down of the Azerbaijani airliner. No one was ever held accountable. Then there was the incident where members of the Azerbaijani diaspora were tortured to death. In response, Russian propagandists were also dealt with harshly over there. And so on and so forth. Escalation, escalation, escalation. After that, Russia strikes soccer facilities on Ukrainian territory, an Azerbaijani company, and hits a pumping station. So, at the station that pumps gas here to Ukraine, Azerbaijani gas, in other words, they are now directly attacking Azerbaijani property on Ukrainian soil. And then Aliyev says, well, in that case, Ukraine will get 2 million for restoring its energy infrastructure. And in general, we're considering possibly lifting the moratorium. So Solovyov comes on his Sunday evening show and says, and I quote, "This is so dangerous if there are also NATO bases there," meaning Turkey, as a NATO member, placing its base on Azerbaijani territory. And this is so dangerous that from a geopolitical standpoint, it could lead to consequences such that this might not be the last special military operation of our generation, quoting Solovyov. And that's not all. In the State Duma, they proposed to completely ban the import of goods from Azerbaijan. They entrusted this position to be voiced by, well, either the alcoholic general or the general alcoholic, I don't know. Gurulyov, he's now a member of the Duma Committee on Regulatory Policy. He was transferred there from the Defense Committee after he suggested launching a nuclear strike on the US while serving on the Defense Committee. Well, what? Why not? A note for Donald Trump. So, really, listen, over there in Russia, have they learned to produce anything besides threats and war? I would really like to see how Russia, with its, well, in these last days of the so-called special military operation, would try to fight on another front against Azerbaijan and Turkey. Erdogan would wipe out the remnants of the Black Sea Fleet in an instant. Thanks to Ukraine, it's already been thinned out quite a bit. And we appreciate the support from Azerbaijan, and it would be wonderful, this is just my personal addition, if Mr. Aliyev could use his close ties with Mr. Erdogan to influence him, so that Turkey wouldn't help Russia circumvent sanctions so actively and wouldn't buy so many Russian oil products. That would really, really help Ukraine. I'm not being sarcastic right now, this is a completely genuine request. As for North Korea, every piece of news there comes from the Korean Central News Agency. They live in a different world. So it might seem to you like they're being ironic, but actually no. These are their real news stories. For Russians, they're now actively developing new routes for Russians to North Korea, tourism, that one and only water park with a view of the missile launch site, and so on. But they've come up with another form of entertainment for them. Russians have been offered the chance to play golf in North Korea on a course where, in fact, missile silos are disguised. So the entertainment for Russians continues. And Kim Jong-un has opened a large 18-hole golf club. The course is 7,000 meters long. Overall, it's one of the longest golf clubs in Asia. Of course, he plays there himself, and probably that's about it. But now they've decided to let Russians in there. And this golf club was actually built back in 1987. It was his father who built it. And attention! According to legend, Kim Jong-un's father, Kim Jong-il, who attended the opening ceremony in 1991, the club took 4 years to build, hit 11 holes in a row, all in one shot, the very first time he picked up a club. In other words, he just right into the hole and did that 11 times, thus setting a world record. And just for context, in 2022, the Daily Mail reported that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un disguised a missile test site as a private golf course. And satellite images confirm this. So basically, there are missile silos underneath the golf club. Isn't that just wonderful? Wonderful. It's like some kind of miracle. By the way, it's still unclear whether the water park has been closed or not. I've seen ads for that water park. There's a bunch of terrified extras pretending to be happy North Korean vacationers. But there are real reviews from Russian tourists. Let me read you a couple. People are a little scared, but at the resort, everyone waved at us. Or here's another one from a tourist from Vladivostok. It's a real shame that we're not allowed to talk to people. There is no contact here at all. Or here's another blogger. The tourist escort was really almost constant. On the beach, someone was always nearby. It felt like care, not control. At the same time, this blogger doesn't rule out the possibility that their messages, as tourists, were being listened to while they were there. But she added, "We just weren't afraid. We have nothing to hide." God, well, I don't even know. Well, yeah. We weren't afraid that we'd be shot. There's no reason to shoot us, right? How? Oh, let them listen. They're such nice people. How? Is it that a person is born already in a slave's cocoon? I don't understand. And here's some important news. In terms of the impunity with which Russians have been acting in the Baltic Sea, maybe now, at least, they won't be able to pull their tricks there as often. For the first time, a NATO country has charged the captain of a Russian Shadow Fleet tanker with damaging underwater cables. Remember those incidents? There were about a dozen of them. Right now we're talking about the tanker Eagle S. S as in $sign. No, not the eagles behind. So, on August 11th, the Finnish prosecutor's office charged the captain, as well as the first and second mates, with vandalism and serious interference with telecommunications. All three are citizens of Georgia and India. But the tanker is transporting Russian oil and belongs to the Russian Shadow Fleet. Russia only understands force. I've said it more than once already. All these underwater incidents and... By the way, by a strange coincidence, all these incidents started when Patrushev became the head of the Maritime Board, which was created specifically for him. The goal of the board is Russia's dominance over the seas and oceans. I highly doubt that the head of the FSB, the former head, who blew up apartment buildings for Putin in Russia, the so-called Ryazan Sugar, and was involved in the most high-profile, both assassination attempts and murders of opposition figures, I think he had a hand in those as well. So, I really doubt that Patrushev suddenly, after so many years, decided that his true calling is to build ships, even though he does have a relevant education. That's why Russia will respond to these underwater mischiefs with even greater force. There is a very interesting service that shows where and which telecommunication or electrical cable runs underwater in seas and oceans, who owns it, where it starts, where it ends, and so on. So, I checked out this service. There's an interesting telecommunication cable from Rostelecom that runs from St. Petersburg to the Kaliningrad region. A perfectly symmetrical response to the Russians. Just cut it up. Preferably, don't just break it, but cut out a several kilometer section somewhere in the middle and let the tough Finnish or Estonian crabs drag it off somewhere far away. Let them have the same kind of problems. They only understand force. Sabotage with arson at several warehouses, remember, in Europe, when special people were hired, unfortunately, some Ukrainian citizens were involved too, and incendiary mixtures were put into packages, of course, with a mechanism. And at some point, somewhere in a warehouse, this package would catch fire and burn everything that was nearby. Go ahead, do the same thing. You burn down one of their warehouses, burn down all their wild berries, what else do they have? Burn them? I don't think that's a big problem. That's the only way they understand. All these measures there. Oh, don't do it. Oh, don't. Kim Jong-un is stealing money all over the world through his cyber division. So hit all their wallets, wipe them out in the offshore accounts, wherever they are. That's the only way. Yes, it's breaking the law. And that's not good. That's not how Europe works and so on. No, that's the only way they understand. Goodness shouldn't just have fists. It should have gigantic fists. Our segment, 4th day in a row, the fuel cans are burning. Another major Rosneft oil refinery has shut down due to Ukrainian drone strikes. The The Saratov refinery, which was recently hit, has completely stopped receiving raw materials. There you have it. That's the third one this month. In other words, in just 10 days, it's the third refinery whose operations have been disrupted by small but proud drones. An excellent result. And here are the consequences. Direct and eloquent consequences. There are almost no reserves left, and oil industry workers have been summoned to the government after gasoline prices hit a record high. So how many is it? Gasoline prices in Russia have been rising for 5 days in a row. 5 days in a row. The government is preparing an emergency meeting. Gasoline is getting more expensive because there are practically no reserves left on the independent market. And in addition, the incidents at the refineries have had an impact, according to Russian experts. Of course, 3 incidents in 10 days, that's very serious. And that's why Putin will be begging for an air ceasefire on his knees. On his knees. Yes, so they can stock up and maybe later, cover things with some kind of netting. By the way, in the Moscow region, seriously, I saw some footage. Entire refineries are being covered with giant anti-drone nets. Interesting. But there's a way to crack this story. So friends, here's a piece of news that just had to be mentioned. Kadyrov's son performed a lezginka dance with a gold pistol at a Chechen talent contest. I mean, well, you can picture it, right? This is Adam, the son, who's already run out of space here for his awards, so now they're starting to hang them on his back. Let me remind you, he's 17 years old. He came out on stage at the Chechen State Philharmonic in a black tracksuit, sneakers, and with a gold pistol on his belt. He also had gleaming gold chains on that oak, yes, and hanging from them were these truly massive, oversized initials of his, also crafted in shining gold. Listen closely. At the prestigious Philharmonic, he's energetically dancing. Just like his father, the esteemed academic, the son is joyfully dancing at the Grand Philharmonic. My God, what an intellectual family. Isn't he just wonderful? I bet the academic father was moved to tears by such talent. So, this project, under which Adam Kadyrov performed, continues to fulfill its mission, to discover new talents and provide a stage for gifted young people to develop and express themselves, wrote Kadyrov. By the way, he himself posted the video where his son is dancing in a tracksuit with a gold pistol. And he added that all the participants of the competition were paid